All right, so later this year, I'm planning a trip to visit my friend in Europe. And so I thought it'd be a great opportunity to make this video for you guys about booking business class flights to Europe using your points and miles. Now, in theory, this is a very straightforward process. It takes only 3 steps, okay? So the first step is to actually earn your points, okay? You have to have either a Capital One credit card, an AMEX credit card, a Chase card, a Citi or a Bilt, any of the major reward programs, and actually earn enough points that you can then use to do this, okay? Now you have the points, step 1. Step 2 is to transfer those points over to a partner. So each of these credit card programs have transfer partners that you'll see on their websites that allow you to move your points over to these partner airlines, which then for step 3, once you have these points transferred, is you actually book the flight, okay? Now, the difficult part is not swiping your credit card purchasing stuff, nor is it actually to transfer the points because you just have to click a button. The difficult part is step number 3, which is why I actually haven't made an international flights video yet. Most of the transfer point scenarios and use cases that I've given you guys are for domestic flights because it's very simple. I'm gonna go out there and say that one major difference with domestic and international flights is that for international award ticket availability and redemptions, just generally speaking in terms of value, there is no value to be had in economy ticket flight redemptions. Now, when you're traveling internationally from the US to overseas, well, of course, if you're overseas, and I guess this video is not for you, but if you're traveling overseas, generally it's going to be a longer flight. And so I think it probably justifies using your points or miles to spend a little bit more to use them for a business class redemption. As I've talked about in my other videos, flying domestically, you probably don't need to be in a lie flat seat, nor do they even offer that. But when you're flying, 12, 14 hours to Europe or Asia from the US, it can be worth it to have that little bit of comfort. Now, for this video, I'm gonna focus on the 3rd step of the process that I briefly outlined, that being actually booking the flights, okay? And I'm gonna be very real with you guys throughout this process and not try to just show you that there's a possible way to, get a 50,000 point redemption in first class over to Europe round trip or something like that and not actually explain like in real time how it goes. I spent the last few days looking through the different options and seeing award ticket availability because, again, like I said, this is a trip I do plan on taking. So I've been very busy at work and other things this year. And so my focus is not just looking at award ticket availability, but in the limited time that I do have, to crank out some of this content for you guys, I want to make it clear that this is a time-consuming thing. So to save you guys a little bit of time, hopefully this video explains a little bit of that. So to get started with this process, what I want to show you guys is the way I'm going to do this, which is my airline transfer partner spreadsheet. So I'm actually going to start recording my screen so you guys can see this kind of in real time. So as I mentioned before, the process begins by earning your points. So once you have your points on one of these programs, that being Capital One, AMEX, Chase, and Bilt. So once you have those points, you can see these transfer ratios. Everything's pretty much 1-to-1 except this EVA Air for Capital One, which isn't offered by any other credit card issuer right now. But basically what this means is that your point value is transferred 1-to-1 from Capital One, AMEX, Chase, or Bilt over to one of these airline loyalty programs on the left. So in a way, this should be kind of the other way around, but you're going to transfer them to one of these programs. Now, the reason we have the alliance here is to demonstrate that if you're looking for a particular flight that's offered by, let's say, United, then you're going to look through all of the Star Alliance partners to verify their award ticket availability and search on those platforms for your award ticket, right? So we're not going to book, let's say, on United necessarily if we find that that's the ticket that we want to book or the service that we want to fly on. So this spreadsheet is exactly how I'm going to go through this video and just briefly go through each of the options. I already have all of the tabs open, so I don't have to search for the websites, but it's probably going to make me log in again. So I'm going to try to do this as quickly as possible. And if I sound a little bit, like sick or kind of something, it's because it's absolutely freezing outside. And because it's low humidity, I guess it's also cold inside. I have the heat cranking, but it's still cold. So without further ado, let's get started here with the first one, which is going to be, actually, what am I saying? Without further ado, we're gonna get started with benchmarking our flight, okay? So the first step to actually looking for a flight is actually searching on Google Flights. Okay, so you can use whatever program you want to use, but Google Flights is generally pretty straightforward user interface. So we're looking at, right now at least, a round trip flight from Austin to Geneva in Switzerland. Okay, so again, if your use case is different and you're flying to a different city in Europe, or you're flying from a different place in the US like JFK or LAX, you just plug those in here and do the kind of the process on your side with a different input. Now for the dates we've chosen in a couple months, and we're gonna look at business class redemptions. Again, like I said, for economy, you're not gonna find there's much value or even any better options than just booking a cash price ticket for the most part. So for business class, we're looking at this first option is 14 hours and 20 minutes. I like to kind of stay on the shorter side in terms of the flight duration, and have as few stops as possible, just because I don't want to sit around flying for 24 hours. Doesn't make any sense. Like this 13-hour layover in London, that's not going to work for me. So if I were to book this flight in terms of a cash price, what I do is click on this, and this is kind of the service that we would go with, okay? So we see both options here. This one is a layover in London for an hour and 45 minutes, and on the way back, it's a 2-hour layover in London again, which is okay, that's acceptable. It's a $3,500, $3,578 exactly to book this cash price ticket, okay? So now, the important part here is that we see this is serviced by these carriers, okay? So British Airways, you see over here that's American as well. But British Airways, if we go back to our little spreadsheet, we'll see that British Airways is part of the One World Alliance, okay? So now what that means is we can go ahead and search through all of these partners, including British, to see what the pricing is on their websites. So that's what we're going to do for step one of this process, all right? So the first one we're gonna check is, of course, American Airlines, okay? So because this is an American Airlines branded flight, it's not operated by American, but we wanna see if this is possible. So of course, I need to probably log back in. I'm gonna see if I can just do this without having to do that. You wanna check redeem miles. On all of these searches, it's important that you check the option for redeeming your miles or book with points, because it's not going to give you the same options if you're not booking with points. Okay, so we'll see that from Austin to Geneva on the 25th, we're gonna look for the same service, right? We have to compare apples to apples. Now, this is a 8 p.m. departing, arriving at 2:40 p.m. local time the next day in Switzerland. In Switzerland, can I speak? Let's see, so it doesn't look like this exact option is available, and that's going to happen, okay? So contrary to popular belief, it's not this easy, straightforward process when you look for award ticket pricing. And if you look at the top here, this 87,500 points, that's going to be the best option on here in terms of the business class redemption that we have above, right? So over here, we'll see that some of these are like 115, 115. I don't even see this 85,000, which is okay, because again, American is just what we're using to see that this flight is available, because this is an easier way to search in terms of their interface. American Airlines has a much better interface, for example, than British Airways' interface, which I'll have to show you guys here in a second anyway. But you have to keep in mind that you cannot transfer either Chase, AMEX, or Capital One points over to American. So this is kind of just a search tool. You can't actually, unless you are just rich on American Airlines points. So just at a glance, every single one of these options has almost $1,000 or more in carrier imposed surcharges. So when we're looking at international flights, there are some differences once again. And surcharges, that being fuel surcharges and other surcharges that are going to be carried over by the operating airline that gets passed on to the customer, which is you. that you have to pay for it in terms of like an additional cost in addition to the points is something you have to keep in mind. So if we're looking at this, for example, leaving at 5, getting there at 5, with 2 stops, which is actually terrible. So this one stop, let's just say you want to fly in main cabin, which isn't even a great option for this many points. You're paying $1,000. You're more than $1,000 just in fuel surcharges. I don't know if this is fuel surcharges, but this is extra in terms of a fee that you have to pay. 87,000 points is $870 if you want to do the 1 cent per point kind of valuation conversion there. So let's say like 870 plus 1,100, that's almost $2,000 for this flight, okay? And we're just talking about, well, this is a round trip, and in a way, it is still better than this $3,500 that you would spend otherwise, but we can do, I think, a lot better than that in terms of especially the carrier imposed fees, okay? So American, we've done that search. We're not gonna spend too much time on each of these. And that's what I'd recommend too for you guys. Like, this process should not take you days. And if it is, you could spend those days working on a business and probably make more money, or just figure out how to day trade it and do a call option on Tesla expiring in 2 days out of the money, and you probably make some money. Don't do that. But the second one on here is British Airways, okay? And if you want to skip through some of these because these are airlines that you don't want to transfer your points over to for some reason, then you can do that. But what I like to do is be thorough and just check every single partner. If it has an award program, or rather a platform of a credit card that I have that I can transfer over from. If you don't, then there's no point in doing that because you can't use that program anyway to transfer your points to. So for British Airways, let's go over here. Oh, actually, I lied. The next one we're gonna do is Alaska Airlines, which is only specifically for Bilt. Once again, you'll see there's no numbers for Capital and AMEX or Chase because you can only transfer your points from Bilt over to Alaska, which is tough. But if you have a lot of Bilt points, then that's great. So same thing here, we're gonna click on use miles, okay? And this is the same, make sure that's the 25th through the 31st here. It oftentimes helps just to click on flexible dates because if you'll listen to anybody that tells you how to do this, they'll say that having a flexible travel schedule itinerary is good because award tickets are hard to come by, okay? And the more that I make these videos and the more you guys watch them, then the fewer the tickets there will be. It's a simple matter of fact. So while this loads, we'll see what our options are. So it looks like this is probably, yeah, so this shows the award calendar, which is what a lot of programs are gonna do. They'll have the entire month of March here, and it shows what the different costs are. But we're looking at business class, so I'd assume 27,000 points, which is $270 of value essentially, is economy or saver class for Alaska. So we'll click on business class and see what the options are. And again, it's not very good. I don't know why it even lets you do that. But let's say, you're able to leave on the 4th and come back on like the 11th. So then that's a different week that we're looking at traveling. So this is already better than what we saw on American Airlines website. So 87,000 points being the best redemption, and that's even main cabin actually. So business for transferred over to Alaska, which means, again, this is the same value that you're transferring over because it's a 1-to-1 ratio of those points. But with those same amount of points, you can get better value by transferring them over to Alaska, in this case, if we're only looking at these two competitors, okay? So this is taking a little bit longer than I expected, as it always does, so I'm gonna try to speed through this a little bit. So in terms of this use case for Alaska Airlines, this is definitely not a good option, okay? And again, you have to check each of these, and most of the time, it's not going to be a good option, okay? So British Airways, let's get moving along here. So we'll see that I've already done the search, so we're just gonna scroll through this. On the 24th, arriving on the 25th to Geneva, there are some business class options available. So we're just gonna click on the business class ones because that's what we're considering as a flight option. And again, we wanna try to get as close to a 1-to-1 comparison, like a apples to apples comparison like I talked about. So if we're looking at this 8 p.m. departing, 2:40 p.m. arriving with a LHR layover. So the outbound connecting flight, this one is 8 p.m. to 2 p.m., which is the same as what we're looking at here. Getting lost in the tabs. And then we can scroll down to inbound flights on the 31st, and it looks like 7 to 3 p.m. That's a little bit different. That's okay. We're just going to see what the pricing is here. There's only one ticket left in business class, which is fine. So we'll click on that and then go to our journey summary. 78,500 avios at a 1 cent per point value is $785. It's cent, so you just take off 2 zeros, right? $785 is an insanely better value than a $3,500 cash price ticket, okay? And for most people like myself, I'm not good at using my points in terms of like spending them like all the time because I'm not always traveling, okay? Like if I'm traveling for work, it's usually comped, let's be honest. And then if I'm traveling for leisure, if I'm going with other people, sometimes I'll just, book it in cash, or if I get lazy, I'll just book it in cash. But 78,000, this is again, round trip, plus 207, give or take 270 bucks. We're looking at around $1,000 all in of just value, right? But if you have these points, you're not paying for it because you already have them. So it's $268 plus 78,500 avios. So far, this is by far the best value. Now, as we walk through the other options, I don't want to spend too much time again, just because I want to look at rough estimates on point pricing and value that we can get for our points. So this is through Cathay Pacific. And again, if you'll notice, we're going alphabetically kind of through this list of just the different partners and what options there are available. So for Cathay Pacific, in this case, we're looking at 85,000 in terms of the best option. On the 25th, it's actually not available, even though they are a One World partner. Sometimes they just don't release the same award ticket availability for their partner airlines, okay? Being part of the alliance, though, means that it is possible to book that flight service with that partner airline. So Cathay Pacific, 85,000 points each way is not going to be worth it. That's 170,000. Is it 170,000 points round trip, which is 1,700 plus any surcharges that they might have. So Cathay is not a good option for this use case. Finnair, I actually just signed up for today because it only has Capital One as a transfer partner. So if you have a lot of Capital One miles, this is fine to check. But when I did this search earlier, there were no flights available, which means they don't release availability for this particular service. And again, you want to check award flight, not just regular flights, because it won't work. But yeah, you see it shows no flights available. And unfortunately, this is what's going to happen most of the time for most of these options, okay? Every now and then you're going to find like a diamond in the rough almost. Like I want to say this is just not like a free-for-all where everybody has, award tickets available everywhere. It would be too easy then. Everybody would be flying business class, okay? So the next one is Iberia. This one's cool because it's AMEX, Chase, and Bilt. The only one they don't have for a transfer partner or as a loyalty program to transfer over from is Capital One. But let's see. I think I did this search earlier. They also don't have availability. And at any point during this process, if you're lazy and you don't want to check all of them, if you see one you like, you can just do it. You can just lock in and or lock in that use case and transfer your points over and then just do that. So 8 to 2, so 8 to, what is this? Like 8 to 3, so, or something, that's fine. So they give you options because I guess depending on how much you want to spend out of pocket compared to the amount of Avios that you have. But once again, Avios points are the currency of One World, and so it's the same for British Airways. But for Iberia, it's going to be, this first option with the most points and the fewest amount of dollars spent, it's 210,000 Avios plus $2,000. So no way. Iberia, not a good option for this. All right. Qatar Airways, or no, Qantas. Actually, that's not how you say it. Somebody's gonna fry me in the comment section. Quintus. I think something like that. Now, quickly, for the same service, right? So looking at a flight from, in this case, Austin to Geneva, okay? So Texas to Switzerland, that's really odd to me. But if you look at different dates, okay, so this is like the second half of the video, if you want to call it that, but I'm gonna make it very quick, so it's not gonna be second half. If you look at just like a day or two before and after, just on Google Flights, just to see. If you remember, for this first one, we're looking at British Airways, which is Avios, which is One World, right? So you're thinking, oh, well, we can't use any of these other loyalty programs because we've locked ourselves in to this particular service that we're benchmarking as the business class flight that we could otherwise purchase in cash. Well, that's not true, because if you go back to Google Flights and you had just moved it one day after, so we were looking at departing Tuesday. If we just look at departing Wednesday, coming back also on Monday, the 31st, we'll see that now the options are, there are some United options. And United is part of the Star Lines, okay? Now, United is okay because you can transfer your points over from Chase and Bilt, but point being is that if you want to expand your search to allow for a greater variety of loyalty programs that you can transfer your points over to book flights, I would do that. Because if you're getting stuck with nothing being available in Star Alliance, for example, then you can open up One World or SkyTeam. I mean, SkyTeam is very small lines, and so I usually don't think that's a good option like internationally. Usually Star Alliance will have some pretty good options because of the big programs like Chris Flyer, Turkish, like there's so many. And same thing for British, for Avios, which is like British Airways, American Alaska, all those. So for this search, same thing, we would want to look at a business class service. And I'll just briefly show you guys how I would do this part of it. Let's just say this first option is what we want to go with. No, that first option is terrible. If we're looking at, honestly, this one is what I would go with. So this business class service returning on the 31st as well, but with a 3-hour layover at Dulles, which I would just go to the Capital One Lounge because it's awesome and spend some time there, as opposed to spending 8 hours in New Jersey. We'll see that $6,900, okay? So even if you want to ballpark it the same as the $3,500 for this first one, that's fine, because that's like roughly what you could pay in cash for this same service. But once again, the process kind of restarts with this to go through the exercise of checking the different loyalty programs of United, of Star Alliance, Jesus. Sometimes the best option will actually be with the kind of flagship airline, so with United. But then the caveat is that you have to have a way to transfer those points over to United. So that means in this case, if this was a good option, you would need to have those Chase Ultimate Rewards or Bilt. It's not possible right now, as of the making of this video, to transfer between the loyalty programs, like between Capital One, AMEX, Chase, and Bilt, or Citi, or anything else. From here, the rest of the options I would go through on this list from Air Canada all the way down through Turkish. Okay, and you just check the exact same way, checking book with Aeroplan points, and then putting in the correct destination, doing the same departure and return, and then you're good. Boom. And then you have your points transferred over. Once you have to do that through Capital One, Chase, or Amex, which I've talked about, or I've showed you guys a bajillion times. You can create your own spreadsheet if there's airlines you don't like, or airlines that or programs that you don't have a way to transfer the points over to. You can delete them. I'll probably put a link to this in the description box so you guys can see it. I'll probably add referral links to all the cards if you guys, for whatever reason, don't have any of these cards to accrue the points, because that's like the first step. It's just having the points in your portal so you can use them to transfer and then book these flights. So today's use case was to Switzerland, which is in Europe, but it's the same process internationally anywhere. It just is a little bit more complicated, especially because there's so many programs and the award charts and everything can be very confusing or difficult just because the user interfaces sometimes are terrible. For example, just the last thing I'll say is that ANA, I've been locked out of my account because I have to literally get a physical piece of mail to reset my password. Like it seems the only way to do it. And their website is still like under maintenance every time I click on reset password, but I don't live at the same address when I first signed up for this. And so I don't have a way to change the address without logging in. It's a total mess. Anyway, to recap, 3-step process: accrue points, transfer points, book on these partner programs. And when looking through availability, business class and above will give you the best value. In this case today that we saw, it was on British Airways for this Austin to Geneva flight, which is a US to Europe service. And that is what I would go with if you want to, this is insanely good value compared to the cash price ticket. So hopefully this explained the process a little bit for you guys that may be new to this, or if you just want to see an example of a flight to Europe. I'll probably do another at some point later this year. I'm probably planning a trip to Asia as well, but I may make it specific just to a particular country or just to kind of a region from a region of the US. I think that makes it more straightforward because, again, this is a very case-by-case basis, and it's not as easy as it seems or people make it seem on the internet these days. So, hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys in the next one.